Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Yankees win the series against the Miami Marlins, but unfortunately they don't sweep. So they sit at 7-2, which is a very good record through 9 games. And at a bare minimum, each series you know, has been good when you consider obviously you sweep the San Francisco Giants, winning 2 out of 3 at Seattle is very good. And then this one, 2 out of 3 home against the Marlins is acceptable, right? Like if you lost 2 out of 3, obviously that wouldn't be. In some series you might lose, and it's okay. Here, as I said going in, take 2 out of 3, that's fine. But when you have it that close, Yankees with a 4-1 lead in game 3, have the Marlins on the ropes, and were unable to tack on and a bullpen that isn't very deep, quite frankly, even, doesn't have, all that much, in my opinion, at the top. With David Bednar unavailable after having thrown over 30 pitches in the second game, unfortunately, mostly Jake Bird in the eighth inning were unable to protect the lead. And so the Yankees did lose the last game 7-6. Um, Ultimately, the Yankees, there's a lot of positives with them. I think the rotation being a big one, although, I think my biggest concern, Ryan Weathers, he didn't exactly do very well in game 2, which we'll talk about. And here, Max Fried, it was his worst. I mean, out of his 3 outings, it was his worst of the 3. He kept a minute. He wasn't terrible. He got pretty deep into the game, 6 and 2/3 innings, 3 runs allowed. But, you know, the Yankees' bottom of the order is problematic. Really 6 through 9 is been very, very bad. Primarily consisting of Jazz Chisholm Jr., Austin Wells, Jose Caballero, and Ryan McMahon. And not for nothing, in terms of moving it to the top of the order, Trent Grisham, hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire either. So they've been very dependent on 2 through 5. Um, and let's kind of begin there. Let's start with a positive. My player of the series is Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, who really was not very good on that opening road trip, did have a couple of home runs in San Francisco, but in Seattle was really, really struggling to the point where you could see he was like kind of caught in between. And the strikeouts were piling up, and he just was not looking very good. He left Seattle with a 125 batting average, and you knew it wasn't going to last. And you know, lo and behold, the first at bat of the home season, he hits a 2-run homer, and it was just a very consistent, solid series for Aaron Judge. There was a few other candidates for sure that put up some pretty gaudy numbers. Will Warren had a nice outing. Ben Rice, with him, it was a little bit of like it was a little bit too much to the extremes. And also Ben Rice, I gave him the award for the last series. Aaron Judge makes a lot of sense here, combining for going. He goes 6 for 12 with a homer, 4 RBIs, 2 walks, and only 2 strikeouts. So Judge is my player of the series, and hopefully this can get him going. So now all of a sudden, after a really, really cold start, now he's batting 250 with an 853 OPS, which is not Judge numbers, but they're more than respectable. So, hoping that this is going to get him right. On the flip side, the worst player of the series goes to Jose Caballero. And I was never confident that Caballero, with Volpe out, was going to just take the shortstop job and run with it. I was really hoping for it, as someone who doesn't trust Anthony Volpe and knows that, Volpe gets a lot more run than he deserves with the Yankees. But Caballero, ideally, is the guy that is off your bench, pinch runner, someone where you can use his versatility. By no means is he a starting player. And he's just not giving you much at all. So in this series, in the 3 games, Caballero goes 0 for 10 with a walk and 4 strikeouts. He did have 2 steals in game 1, but that was not nearly enough to sort of sway me from him being the worst player of the series. And again, he wasn't alone. Definitely other candidates as well. Many of them, the bottom of the order guys. And, McMahon got the award last series. Actually, Chisholm the first series. And, there's a lot to discuss with Jazz as well. Ryan Weathers, as I mentioned before, he didn't pitch very well. Jake Bird, obviously, he had a really, really big game three. To be fair to him, he did pitch well in game one. So we go with Jose Caballero, um, and he really needs to turn it around. But even if he does, if Anthony Volpe is returning anytime soon, I have a hard time believing that Caballero is going to be able to turn it around enough to the point where Volpe, would be in any sort of trouble. Volpe, for better or worse, is going to get that opportunity when he returns. So, first game of the season, all very good. Um, and a big theme of this series is the Yankees had 30 walks, which was, I believe, a team record for a 3-game series. They had 11 walks in game one, 10 in game two, and 9 in game three. So, yeah, franchise record for a 3-game series. And what's even more impressive as well, when you think about it, is that they didn't even go the full 9 innings for games one and two. 8 innings in game one, 8 innings in game two. So that's a good trait to have. And it kind of speaks to what the Yankees are, right? Very, home run, walk out and strikeout, home run, walk and strikeout type of team. But, it definitely provides opportunities to which the Yankees really, in game one, struggled mightily with runners in scoring position. Want to get the number for game three. Game three, 2 for 12. Not so good either. Game two, they were 5 for 16. So game two, they got a bunch of hits, with ducks on the pond. But game one, 1 for 13. But it didn't matter. They win it, very easily, 8-2. Will Warren, who gives up an early home run to Xavier Edwards, who doesn't hit many home runs, gets his first win of the season, got a no decision in San Francisco, 5 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. So, look, Will Warren's not going to, I almost feel like with Cam Schiller being what he is, Will Warren kind of gets a little bit lost for the progression that he's made. And there's still a lot to go for Will Warren. I think that when everyone's healthy, there's no guarantees. But if we're thinking about it, let's say Rodon and Cole come back within the next month or two. Will Warren has a very, very good chance to be within the starting five. Given the way they feel about Luis Heel, given the way that Ryan Weathers looks, he, maybe down the road when Clark Schmidt comes back and somehow everyone's healthy, then there's a question to be had there. But Warren so far has looked solid. And for the the Marlins, Uri Perez struggled in terms of walks. 4 innings, 2 hits, 4 runs, 6 walks, and 4 strikeouts. This is a good pitcher. He did pretty well against the Yankees, if I remember correctly, last year in Miami. But he just was, the Yankees were working deep counts against him. And, you get a Grisham walk and a Judge homer to start it out. So, and I'm pretty sure Judge in 2023 against San Francisco, first game of the season, first at bat, he homered. So he's been, and it's possible there's other situations as well where, Judge in his career, it seems like he does a lot of damage in the first inning and no better time to do it for the home opener. And I want to think ABS a little bit here. Because especially with it being year one, and I think it really is very relevant. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it in game one. I think we'll get back to it more in games 2 and 3, but it's a problem as far as the way that things are going with the Yankees. I saw a Marlins team that was much more efficient and much more effective in terms of challenging. Now, look, the Yankees, like the first 2 series, it was pretty good from what I can remember. I think in San Francisco, they had that running in Seattle where, they were correctly called, the hitters were, so they've had their moments, but I'm a little bit concerned. But that's a conversation for the next couple of games. Yankees basically, it was a walk brigade in the second inning. Grisham with a bases loaded walk. Aaron Judge gets hit by a pitch with the bases loaded. And they kind of left Perez off the hook a bit. But Yankees, really the only damage done against Will Warren was a couple of solo homers. Where Owen Casey homers off him in the 5th. But the Yankees were able to get back going, get a run back in the sixth, where some sloppy defense by the Marlins, where Caballero reaches on an error after Wells had walked. Um, Eventually, what happens is with Cody Bellinger up, with I believe the bases loaded and 2 out at the time, there's a wild pitch that scores Austin Wells to give him a 5-2 lead. Tim Hill, who's just been fantastic so far this season, he finished out the sixth inning. That was actually the biggest spot of the game when you think about it. It was 2 on, 2 out, 4-2. And by the way, I should mention the key moment of the game was the Aaron Judge home run. The key moment of game one was very easily the Judge homer. But yeah, Tim Hill in a big spot. I still, it still bothers me how Aaron Boone chose Nestor Cortez over Tim Hill in the World Series a couple years ago. It's just, Tim Hill, if he had to face Freddie Freeman, he's just so tough against lefties. And, he's not a strikeout guy, but he induces soft contact. That's exactly what happened here. Liam Hicks, who's been off to a hot start, grounded out to Hill down the inning. Jake Bird pitches a very good seventh. To that point, it was a 1-2-3 inning for Bird. Bird, until game three, he had been looking pretty sharp. That was not the case, in this final game of the series. Ben Rice is a story at the end of game one, where Rice really, really struggled at the start of this game, and he had a bad confirmed strike against him in ABS. For Rice, it was games 1 and 2, completely incorrect, not even close. And that's frustrating because Ben Rice is the guy that I would trust. He's got to figure that out because these were not even, for some reason, he thought that they were balls and they weren't. But Ben Rice, as he does, even in the series where he struck out 3 times in game 1 and 3 times in game 2, but yet did a ton of damage. Homer in the bottom of the 7th, and then a 2-run double in the bottom of the 8th. So that almost was that was nearly out. So Yankees take an 8-2 lead. The only other thing of interest in the 9th, crazy catch by Cody Bellinger on Xavier Edwards, where it goes off of the heel, the wrist area, and somehow he's able to backhand scoop it, but it didn't hit the ground. It was just, I'm not sure exactly how that happened. He didn't even really, he was surprised the ball was even in his glove. And so that was kind of the fun moment. Ryan Yarbrough was the pitcher at that point. So good job by Hilbert, Hedrick, and Yarbrough. And the Yankees win game 1, 8-2. So the second game, I am not confident in Ryan Weathers at all. He threw, it ended up being 88 pitches in 3 2/3 innings. Really, it was 81 pitches through 3 against his former team. 3 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, 3 walks, and 4 strikeouts. I don't really see it with Weathers. Look, you want to give him a shot now with guys out, that's fine, right? There's theoretical upside, right? As opposed to if you want to deal with a Yarbrough who had success when he was in the rotation last year, or Paul Blackburn. You could go with those guys. You have a lot of starting options, but I'm fine. If you want to go Ryan Weathers, it's fine. They give up a lot of mid-tier prospects to get him. Clearly they like this guy, and I think he has a somewhat longer leash than we like. But yeah, I'm definitely concerned about him. I don't like the way it feels when I watch him. And really, at this point, I'm just kind of hoping if he can give you 4 or 5 innings and just kind of keep you in it, then I'll take it at this point. Kind of like what he did in the Seattle game. For the Marlins, Max Meyer pitched pretty well until Cody Bellinger got him at the end. He goes 4 2/3, 3 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. But it was the Marlin pen that kind of, messed things up. And a little bit of sloppy defense as well for Miami. But yeah, just trouble all the way around for Weathers at the beginning, where you get a Heriberto Hernandez 2-run triple in the first. In the second, you get an Augustin Ramirez RBI single. Of course, Augustin Ramirez was a former Yankee prospect involved in the Jazz Chisholm Jr. trade. And I think Ramirez, look, he's going to be a good, I don't know how he is necessarily defensively as a catcher, but he's very impressive at the dish. So 3-0 Marlins at that point. It felt like it could have been worse, quite frankly. I think this is another situation where Austin Wells in games 2 and 3, defensively as the catcher, gets it incorrect in terms of him thinking that it might have been a strike when it was actually a ball, um, which is a problem. And yes, it was against Austin Slater, former Yankee, now with the Marlins, who did, all right in this series. Yeah, like that just can't be. Really, they should be saying to these guys early in the game, unless it's just an obvious situation, try to steer clear. But that does not seem the Yankees' attitude. And Boone hasn't backed off it. Is and it concerns me. They're gonna continue to challenge and just hope that they have somebody into the game. I don't really like that process. I think that you got to be more selective with this. But so yeah, 3-0 Marlins. They're pretty much cruising along. Um, Third inning, the Yankees get an opportunity that doesn't exactly work out, where Ben Rice strikes out and Giancarlo Stanton pops out with the bases loaded, 1 out and then 2 out for Rice and Stanton. Paul Blackburn comes in and tries to settle things down. A really sloppy play has the Marlins scoring their 4th run. It's a Jacob Marcy single. It's not, I mean, the error goes to Cody Bellinger, where he tries to get the guy out at third, but because of the way the infield was shifted, McMahon had to run over there. He's unable to keep it to catch it. I don't think Paul Blackburn did a great job of backing up. So kind of a collective effort there. And again, I don't think so much on Bellinger, more so on McMahon and Blackburn, to allow that run to score there. So 4-0 Marlins. You get a delay because the umpire took a foul ball, to the face mask, if you will. And so that, this is a very long game. I think there was actually a record for since the pitch clock was instituted. This was the longest 9-inning game. And it didn't even go to the bottom of the ninth. So 4-0 score. Doesn't look great for the Yankees, but they get going in the bottom of the 5th. 2 out, single Judge, and then 2-run homer Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger had been having a pretty solid start to the season, but to that point, actually had no homers or RBIs. And so with that, he was able to hit a 2-run homer, make it 4-2. Then Tim Hill comes on to replace Blackburn in the 6th, does the job. And bottom of the 6th, a nice move by Boone where he pinch hits Paul Goldschmidt for Austin Wells, in a situation where they had brought that lefty was in the game. Goldschmidt walks, and they bring a righty in, Anthony Bender, who we saw again in game 3. He hits Caballero. Ryan McMahon strikes out looking. Big surprise. RBI single Trent Grisham to make it 4-3. RBI single Aaron Judge to tie it at 4. And then they bring on a lefty for Cody Bellinger, sac fly that gets Trent Grisham to make it 5-4. So a very nice rally there for the Yankees. And so they had the lead. A Scar comes in the game. Goldschmidt's out. Fernando Cruz, Hill and Cruz combined for a 1-2-3 7th inning. And then in the bottom of the 7th, pretty crazy. Giancarlo Stanton walks. Then with 1 out, he's still second because they really weren't holding him on. So against his former team, he gets as real of a steal as Giancarlo Stanton could ever get. And then with 2 out, he scores from third on a pass ball. So I mean, you would think that he's, Jose Caballero out there. So the Yankees take a 2-run lead to make it 6-4. And then Camilo Doval comes in. And I should have mentioned earlier in terms of, worst players of the series, Camilo Doval certainly belongs in that conversation. Doval, leadoff single Liam Hicks, double Xavier Edwards. He does strike out Owen Casey, but then Javier Sanoa passed Ryan McMahon for a game-tying 2-run double. I just think with Doval, I don't know if he's very trustworthy as your 8th-inning guy. Fernando Cruz has been pretty good at this point. I don't mind them going that direction. But Boone has been using Cruz a lot in the middle of innings. That's just the way it's been, right? Like kind of like how you see Tim Hill come on against lefties, to kind of end an inning. Seen a lot with Cruz. It feels like he hasn't started an inning a whole lot. And they're going to continue to use Doval late, but I'm skeptical. Ties it up at 6. Brent Hedrick gets out of that inning. And he, it hasn't necessarily been pretty for Hedrick, but he's done a nice job so far this season. And then at the bottom of the 8th is where the Yankees take the lead and keep it off of Michael Peterson. Ryan McMahon does get a leadoff walk. to get things going, then a one-out walk for Judge, and then with two out, Ben Rice works a walk. So you have bases loaded, two out, and Giancarlo Stanton puts together a really nice at bat. And again, against his former team, gets the two-run single to make it 8-6. Now, Otto Lopez, the shortstop, not a great job by him. Where the ball goes under his glove, I felt like he could have made a better effort to keep that in front of him. And the thing is, if you can do that, there's a very good chance you're going to get Stanton out at first. So felt like the Yankees caught a break there, but at the same time, felt like Stanton, 7 pitch at bat, hit the ball fairly well. Yankees take an 8-6 lead. And then on a pass ball by Augustin Ramirez. So I don't know, maybe the defense isn't so good for Ramirez. Ben Rice scores to make it 9-6. So it's a 3-run lead. Then David Bednar comes on. And Bednar, a few days prior, threw 40-plus pitches in Seattle. So here, the first batter, Otto Lopez, reaches on a single to Jazz Chisholm Jr., where it was a routine ground ball. And if he had showed any urgency at all, would have gotten the out easily at first. Instead, takes his time with a soft toss over, and Lopez, give him credit for hustle. I mean, it's what you should be doing, but he hustles and he beats it out. And that ends up having an effect that maybe actually affects them losing game 3. Because David Bednar, who's had his struggles himself, right? David Bednar is not without criticism, but Bednar ends up throwing 33 pitches and becomes unavailable in game 3. And Jazz Chisholm Jr. speaking after the game in game 3, really not taking any accountability at all. It's just tough. I've been pretty vocal about this, that as much as there's tantalizing skill for Jazz and the speed power combination, and he's not a terrible fielder by any means, but I don't really trust him. If you really have true World Series aspirations, I don't think Chisholm's your guy. And not for nothing, this is a very left-hand heavy. Like, I think in terms of just, if you could somehow have like a righty in that position, I would have loved for that in the offseason if they could have, figured that out. But again, Chisholm does that. One out walk to Liam Hicks. So you have 2 on, 1 out. Xavier Edwards single makes it 9-7. Owen Casey strikeout. Javier Sanoa single. To make it bases loaded with 2 out in the 9th, and Bednar, as he does, he picks up his 4th save. He strikes out Griffin Conine to end it. There was a controversial changing of a call earlier in the inning to Owen Casey. He ended up striking him out anyway, but because the Marlins had challenges left, he was able to challenge it and extended the at-bat. It ended up being a strikeout anyway, but again, it's so valuable to have those late challenges. But Bednar holds on. And I should mention as well, want to get better at this, of staying in the moment, that the key moment of the game was the Giancarlo Stanton 2-run single in the 8th inning to give the Yankees the lead. They win by a final score of 9-7. We go to game 3. Game 3, pretty long rain delay, which I'm sure the Yankees didn't mind much. Late, it was a rare Saturday night game. Now you get the MLB on Fox Saturday night games, but it was one of those rare Yes Network Saturday night games, and it was because it was the opening day was the day before. So basically, you get a 3.5-hour rain delay in game 3. Starts at 5:00 when it should have started at 1:30. Max Fried, like I said, pitched all right, was kind of grinding through this one. Pete Fairbanks actually made the opening start. Fairbanks, who had been the closer for the Rays, so the Yankees were used to him. And Fairbanks struggled in that first inning. Now, the reason that they used him in the first inning, I believe he's going on paternity leave, so they wanted to kind of just get him out of there as soon as they could. And I guess with the rain delay, they made that switch. Who was supposed to be the starter, Chris Paddock, ended up pitching, is kind of an unsung hero. Third pitcher to come in, he goes 4 2/3 innings, 3 hits, 1 run. It wasn't an earned run, 4 walks and 4 strikeouts. They did not do the job against him. And in the first inning, Fried gives up an RBI single to Otto Lopez. In that first inning is also where Austin Wells has a failed challenge. But at the bottom of the first, the Yankees strike back. And it would be a 3-run homer for Ben Rice. Ben Rice had an awesome game 3. He goes 1 for 2, 2 runs, 3 RBIs, 3 walks, and no strikeouts. That's the thing. He walks a lot. He works the count a lot. So, and that's why his OPS is 1380 through 9 games. He is definitely the real deal. And so that makes it 3-1. And, um, Fried settles in a little bit. And we go to the bottom of the third. Chris Paddock on, leadoff double for Judge, walk for Cody Bellinger, and Ben Rice reaches on a fielder's choice on a missed catch error by Otto Lopez, where Connor Norby, the throw wasn't great from first, but it was one that Lopez really could have easily caught to at least get one out. They get no one. 4-1, second and third, and nobody out. All set up. And this was where the Yankees didn't take advantage of an opportunity. Giancarlo Stanton grounds out to third. Jazz Chisholm Jr. flies out to shallow center, and then Austin Wells strikes out. Game could have been over right there. And it wasn't. And you knew with a thin bullpen, and Max Fried, look, again, he gave him a lot. Fried ended up throwing 103 pitches, pretty early in the season. But it remains 4-1. Let's jump to the top of the sixth. And this is where Fried walks Jacob Marcy to start the sixth. Otto Lopez singles, still second. And then Heriberto Hernandez reaches on a throwing error by Jose Caballero. Caballero's defense hasn't been that great. His throws have not, he has a quick release, but the arm strength is not very good, and he's been throwing it in the dirt a lot. This was just a high throw. Again, very disappointing from Caballero, not just at the plate, but you don't really trust him a whole lot defensively either at this point as your everyday shortstop. Luckily, though, for the Yankees, Max Fried picks off Hernandez, and so it's kind of no harm, no foul, because that guy was going to third anyway on the Caballero throw. Then they get an out at the plate. Connor Norby grounds out to Caballero. It was reviewed, but it shouldn't have been. Wells, originally called safe. Wells tagged him. So the Yankees keep the 4-3 lead. But you knew they needed more than that. Trent Grisham loses the last challenge in the bottom of the sixth. Again, it's frustrating. And Fernando Cruz relieves Fried in the seventh. He gets the final out of the seventh. Chisholm has left a lot. Chisholm runs his scoring position. He ends up getting a hit in the ninth, but so many times he's one of the last guys who went up there running scoring position. Earlier in the game, he messed up. And then here, with 2 on, 2 out in the seventh, he grounds out against the lefty. So here we go to the eighth. It's a 1-out walk from Marcy against Cruz. Excuse me. And Jake Bird comes on. Now, Jake Bird, like I said, had pitched pretty well up until this point. But he does what you can't do. And that is he walks Lopez, gets Griffin Conine. He hits Griffin Conine. So now it's bases loaded. And then here is your key moment of the game. It is Graham Pauley's 2-run double to give the Marlins a 5-4 lead. And then Ryan Yarbrough comes in. Xavier Edwards, who's a good contact hitter, infield in, 2-run single. So Bird is really most to blame. Cruz slightly for the walk. And Yarbrough as well. 7-4 Marlins. Let's jump to the bottom of the ninth. Anthony Bender comes on, who we saw the day before. 1-out walk to Bellinger. Then Rice walks. Stan strikes out looking. One of the pitches to Stan, the 1-0, clearly outside. He can't challenge it. And that is a problem. And then he strikes out looking. Jazz Chisholm Jr., hopefully this can get him going. I don't know that it will, but he gets a 2-run double to keep the game alive. So that makes it 7-6. And then they intentionally walk Austin Wells. And it sets it up for J.C. Escarra as the pinch hitter for Caballero, which is a very interesting choice. The reason they did it was because Escarra was the only lefty on the bench, and Anthony Bender is a guy who is better against righties and lefties. And that was evident in this inning, right? Where Judge grounds out, Stan strikes out, where the lefties all got on. So the premise makes sense, but and I get pinch hitting for Caballero, but look, Goldschmidt did hit a 3-run homer against George Kirby. I know Goldschmidt, I don't love him against righties, and same with Rosario. It's just tough for J.C. Escarra, a guy who, even though I think there's more, I think Escarra is probably better than the stats indicate, but J.C. Escarra, he hasn't done a whole lot at the major league level offensively. To put him into that spot, just optically, it's strange. When you have a future Hall of Famer in Paul Goldschmidt sitting there, again, they are very, very analytically driven when it comes to things like this. And they were going to go with a lefty, and they felt like Escara was, someone that they would pinch hit for Caballero. The interesting thing to me is if Volpe were healthy, would we have seen that? And that I don't know. And I think when Volpe comes back right away and he hasn't fucked up yet, they probably would have let him in for himself. But that's a conversation for another day. Yankees don't get the sweep. They do win the series though. And so now they're 7-2. And the rest of the division has had their struggles, very early. But the Blue Jays are 4-5. The Orioles are 3-6. The Red Sox are 2-7. The Rays are 4-5. So everyone else is under 500. Coming to town now is the Athletics. Athletics are 3-6. Obviously, not a great team by any means. So here's another series where, at a bare minimum, you got to go 2 out of 3. Would love to sweep. You got Cam Schiller on the mound for game 1, so can't hate those chances in his first Yankee Stadium start this year against Aaron Savale. Game 2, the former Yankee Luis Severino comes in against Will Warren. I don't hate that matchup either. Game 3, though, with Ryan Weathers pitching against Jeffrey Springs, the former Ray lefty. And this is the first lefty Yankees have faced since Robbie Ray, so expect to see the Randall Grichuks of the world and more of a righty lineup there in that one. But another very winnable series. Hopefully they can continue that string going as, they have won their first 3 series of the season. So the homestand continues. They take 2 of 3 for the Marlins, don't get the sweep. Now they'll have a day off, and the Athletics come to town for a 3-game set.